Hey, thanks for going down the road with us. We got a lot of things lined up for you today, not the least of which Congressman Kelly Armstrong is going to join us a little bit later in the show. He knows what I'm going to ask him. The one thing about Congressman Armstrong is he's not afraid to answer questions, and I respect the heck out of that. I'm going to ask him whether or not this race is over, whether or not it's, President-elect Joe Biden. So his staff knows that's coming up, and it's going to be fun to hear and get his reaction to it. Excuse me. I got a little bit of a sore throat today, so you're going to hear a little bit of a throat clearing, which is a different way than I'd put it back home if I was around the boys just having a beer, just so you know. There is someone that whatever the state is paying her, it isn't enough. I'm just going to tell you. Molly Howell works for the North Dakota Department of Health, and she is the immunization program manager. In fact, let's visit with her. Molly, good to have you going down the road with us.
Thanks for having me.
I mean it. Whatever they're paying you, it isn't enough. Did you think when you took this job you were going to be the center of attention? All eyes were going to be on you?
No, but I've been at it for almost 18 years. So there's been a lot over the past 18 years that's been exciting in immunization. So I'm just looking forward to finally having a vaccine to fight COVID-19.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Molly, it started. We saw all the photos and the video from Great Britain, and we saw exactly what's going on across the shore, or across the ocean, I should say, a little bit. Where are we at today? To some of us, even though it's only been a couple, it feels like we're being left behind a little bit. Where are we at in North Dakota?
Well, the Food and Drug Administration, their advisory committee is meeting as we speak to go through all of the clinical trial data regarding the Pfizer COVID vaccine candidate. And we'll be making a recommendation as to whether or not the FDA should approve that vaccine under emergency use authorization. And so that could actually happen today, sometime today.
So if it happens today, then what kicks in after that?
Well, my understanding is once there's that, what we're calling an EUA, you might hear the term EUA, as soon as 24 hours after that, the COVID-19 vaccine can ship out to states. And so we have already placed our initial order for the Pfizer vaccine based on how much is being allocated to North Dakota. And so some of the providers in North Dakota could expect the vaccine as early as this weekend or early next week.
When you say providers, I guess everyone knows there's going to be a pecking order when it comes to who gets vaccinated. And I don't think it's any big secret that frontline healthcare workers and elderly nursing homes, I understand all that. But that's my speculation. Run through the decision process that you are going to make in terms of who gets the vaccines.
So the Federal Advisory Committee, excuse me, on immunization practices will make recommendations as to who should be the highest priority for COVID-19 vaccine. And it's likely those are going to be large groups. So for instance, the only group that they voted on so far for phase 1A is healthcare workers and long-term care residents. And so we're still waiting to hear who will be the next priority for vaccination. But because they're such large groups, we established a North Dakota COVID vaccination ethics committee to make tiers within those priority groups for vaccination. And so the phase 1A tier is posted on our website at the Department of Health, but it starts with frontline healthcare workers in emergency rooms, intensive care units, COVID units, EMS personnel, and then it moves on down the list through the different healthcare workers. Long-term care staff and residents are also a very high priority and are like right after our referral hospitals and their frontline healthcare workers. And so our initial shipment of vaccine, which will be 6,825 doses, will be first going to our referral hospitals to stabilize their workforce and our hospital capacity.
Is this left to the decision of the state, or is there some directive coming down from the federal government on how it's going to be administered?
The federal government will recommend who should be prioritized for the vaccine, But yes, it's ultimately left up to the state to determine those priorities.
Okay. So as you go about making this decision, you talked about a committee, you talked about some of those things. People are going to be knocking on the door. You're going to have two groups of people. You're going to have the people that don't want to take it, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, and then you're going to have the people that wanted it yesterday. So let's talk about the latter first. What do you do with individuals that are going to call and they're going to say, Molly, I want this, I need this. I'm a vulnerable person. I've got diabetes, my weight. I mean, all those different issues. What are you going to do when they call that 328 number and try to get a hold of you?
So we have already started receiving calls from individuals and groups interested in COVID-19 vaccine. And I guess right now I'm looking at this as a positive that people are interested in being vaccinated and truly care about wanting to be vaccinated. And so we're communicating our process to them so they understand that we're using science and ethics to determine who should ultimately receive the vaccine first. And then we are being transparent. All the ethics meetings, they're open meetings that are published on North Dakota's Secretary of State website. People can attend and listen in on their discussions about how they're prioritizing. And we'll keep everyone up to date as we move through the priority group so everyone is aware of who will be next in line for vaccine.
You talked about there are some people, and you looked at that as a positive, because one of the things and the challenges you're going to have to deal with is individuals that don't, want to take that vaccine. Have you put a plan in place? Are you going to, for example, on a national scale, we've got 3 former presidents all saying we will be the first in line to get that shot, just to show you how confident we are in that vaccine. But Molly, I know people in my own life that I work with that will not take the shot. It isn't saying they won't take the shot down the road, a year from now or whatever. They just don't feel comfortable being one of the first ones to take that shot. You've got to be hearing that a lot.
Yeah, we realize that there is some hesitancy around the COVID-19 vaccine, and I think it's understandable. It's brand new. The FDA really hasn't even approved it yet for use. And so I think once people receive additional education and understand the safety of the vaccine and the efficacy of the vaccine, then they may be more willing to take it. And I do think by healthcare providers getting vaccinated first, they're going to set a good example and model that behavior for other North Dakotans. And then hopefully others will be more comfortable taking it when they know their healthcare provider has accepted it and is recommending it.
Are they giving you a couple bucks to educate people on it? Let me give you an example. North Dakota put a fairly aggressive, after a while, mask up campaign out there. I think it did some good. I really do. I think it did some good. At the very least, it made people think when they saw those billboards, when they heard those radio ads and TV ads and those types of things. Are you going to get a budget so that you can make the case and make sure that all of the misinformation out there is being countered by people like yourself that actually understand the science of it?
So as part of the Mask Up campaign, we knew that there was a vaccine coming. And so some of those dollars have been devoted to promote the vaccination and address some of the concerns people have of the vaccination. And so we have already started working on that. And then I have received additional federal funding, and we do plan to use that for additional campaigns moving forward.
So when it's your turn, would you be comfortable and confident that you take it?
Yes, and I cannot wait for my mom and dad to receive it. That's who I want to have it first. So
that's a good point. That's a really good point. I have a mother that is so sick of being basically it's isolation. She can go around her retirement village, but it doesn't change the fact that she can't see her grandkids or great grandkids. So I completely hear you there. There's a number of different vaccines that are on the market. Is there one that you look at living in that world that you go to work in every day that you look at and say, wait, this one's better? This is the one that I hope I can get as much of as possible.
Well, the efficacy of the Moderna vaccine, which is also an mRNA vaccine, and the Pfizer vaccine are very similar according to their clinical trial data. And so I think if people are offered either one of those, they should definitely accept the vaccine. From a logistics point of view, the Moderna vaccine is a little bit easier in terms of storage and handling. It requires just a normal freezer, not the ultra cold freezer. And then it has 30 days of refrigerator stability versus only 5 days for the Pfizer vaccine. And so, from a logistics standpoint, the Moderna vaccine will be much easier to manage in the state and much easier for providers to work with. But in terms of people wanting to be vaccinated, I think both vaccines appear to be fairly equal, and people can feel comfortable taking either one. Having said that, there are some vaccines in the pipeline that will, so both Pfizer and Moderna are 2-dose series. The Johnson and Johnson vaccine, which may be coming in the future, is a single dose vaccine series. And so that would also have some benefit as well.
I got about 30 seconds left, but after you get vaccinated, can you still spread COVID? Say I'm vaccinated right now, I get my shots. Can I still pass COVID along? Do I still need to mask up? I know everybody's going to say mask up until we have herd immunity, but can I still spread COVID?
We don't yet know the answer to that question. So the clinical trials looked at if the vaccines prevented disease. So people having symptoms who then went in and got tested. And so we don't know if people can still spread or still develop asymptomatic infection. And so that will be determined as we have additional data moving forward. So we do believe you still do need to wear a mask and practice social distancing until we know more about these vaccines and more people are vaccinated.
Well, we have a hard time getting masks on them when they're not vaccinated. So I'm not being just a smart keister when I say good luck with that, because it's going to be hard, especially in a state like this. Molly, thanks for what you're doing. Thanks for what you're doing. You've got one heck of a hard job. I wouldn't want it, but I'm glad you have it. So thanks for coming down the road with us.
Thanks for having me.